My name is Upendanais Barasa. I moved to Japan to teach English from Kenya. If you're interested, subscribe. You don't want to miss it. Come on, join the bandwagon. Hey guys, welcome back to this week's video. I'm very excited that we are finally here, and so many of you have been responding well. I've received numerous questions after the last videos went up, but you guys shouldn't worry. I have this whole thing lined up for you. I'm going to have a Q&A session very soon, I think after our first month of uploading all these videos of information, and then you guys will get the chance to ask me questions. But first, today is a very important day. Today we are talking about possible interview questions, what questions to expect, what exact questions to prepare for. I'm not saying that these are the exact questions that you're going to be asked. Some will be asked, some may not be asked, but it's just important for you to have a general idea of what exactly to expect. So let's get started. I'll be glancing here every now and then because I have everything written down. So the first question, as always, tell us about yourself. So I would be very deliberate when it comes to answering this question. Of course, these people know your experience, they've read, your qualifications, your bachelor's degree. You don't want to repeat what we all know. So basically, you could say your name and where you're from and talk about, why you love teaching or why you'd want to teach and why this is something that you're actively pursuing and it has led you to wanting to teach English in Japan. So basically, say your name, maybe where you're from, and go on and on about why you love teaching. Maybe you love to create an impact and you think through teaching English in Japan would be the best way possible. And because English is an ever-growing language, many people speak English in the world, you think it would be better if many people would be able to speak it. Something as simple as that. I don't know. You could just go on and on about why you'd want to teach. If you've taught before, talk about why you love teaching. If you've never taught before, talk about why you would want to get into teaching and why Japan, to be specific. The next question could be, what is the role of an ALT? So basically, they just want to see, do you understand what exactly you're getting yourself into? So basically, we said the ALT is an assistant language teacher. You could start by explaining what an ALT means and what are the roles. Basically, the roles of an ALT is to be a cultural ambassador and to be an assistant language teacher, as ALT suggests, and talk about how an ALT is a cultural ambassador. Maybe sharing aspects of your culture, food, music, traditional clothing, language when it comes to teaching. And then as an assistant language teacher, what is your role? Help with pronunciation, help with making English class fun and interactive, etc. An ALT is not expected to discipline students. We'll come to that. There's a question related to that where you'll be asked to explain. But basically, what is the role of an LT? Two main reasons: cultural ambassador and an assistant to the Japanese teacher of English. Number 3, they would ask you, depending on the company, why did you choose this company? Basically, they just want to see, have you gone through the company? What does the company do? What is the mission of the company? What is the vision of the company? Why do you like this company, to be specific? What exactly do they do, or what exactly do they offer that made you, be attracted and wanting to work for that company? So your answer should be based off of what you see on their website or company profile, basically. Okay, question number 4. What is your experience with public speaking? Very good question. You don't have to worry about this, but you could talk about, maybe you are a student leader in uni, or you are a prefect, or myself, I talked about being in the music and drama club and how I had to perform in front of people every time, introduce yourself, and perform in front of a whole crowd. Or you're a teacher, for example. I'm a teacher by profession, so it was very easy for me to say, oh, I've been a teacher, so I've always had to speak in front of people. What positions did you hold as a teacher? I was on, head of department languages, or you are head of the drama club, or whatever it is. You especially if you are a prefect, I think that's good. If you're a student leader, that's really good. You could talk about your experience in that. And then next question, what are your strengths and weaknesses? We talk about you being a good listener, attention to detail, very key, very patient, very motivated, very driven, and what makes you motivated and driven. When it comes to your weaknesses, try to make your weaknesses look like a strength. You know, there's so many videos on the internet about talking about, weaknesses and how to make them look like a strength. You could go and look up what are the possible answers to this question, but you don't want to paint a picture of yourself being, a terrible person to work with, basically. Next question. Why teaching? Why do you want to teach? And sometimes they might go to the extent of, why do you want to teach English in Japan? So if it's phrased in a way that it's related to Japan, you could talk about the culture, you could talk about the work ethic that Japanese people have, talk about anything related to Japanese culture and Japan as a country, like in totality, technology, whatever it is. And then don't forget to add a sprinkle of teaching itself. Don't just talk about, Japan is a great country. I love anime. I want to move to Japan because of anime. Talk about why you want to move to Japan in relation to teaching, and then in relation to Japan as a country and as a society. If they don't ask the question in relation to Japan, you could just talk about you love teaching because maybe you had a teacher who inspired you, or you think teaching is a noble profession, and why is that? Why you want to teach English, to be specific. Just be simple and straight to the point. Next question. How long do you plan to live in Japan? Japanese people like to ask this question so much. First, I think they're just trying to test, are you able to commit to a 1-year contract, because your first contract would be 1 year. But basically, Japanese people like to hear foreigners praise their country. So sometimes you might not be interviewing for a teaching position, it could be anything in Japan, but they'll always ask, so how long are you planning to live in Japan? Just stay as long as you can, like 2 to 3 years, 3 to 5 years. It's always the safest bit. And then you can go ahead and explain why do you think this would be good for your career progression, to be independent, to be able to experience Japan fully. Just don't just say, I don't know, don't act like you're not sure of how long you want to stay. That's kind of a red flag when it comes to hiring. Next, why Japan? I think we've answered that. Just talk about Japanese culture. What is it that you admire about Japanese culture and Japan as a country? And then again, reference why teaching is important to you and how that is related to Japan. Next question. So they will ask you, what aspect of Japanese culture are you interested in? I would say maybe talk about the work ethic, maybe talk about the respect, the bowing 24/7. It's something that you admire and you think it's something you could gain or learn from. Talk about the culture in general, talk about technology, maybe. Just talk about something about Japanese culture in relation to like character building that you'd want to acquire or that you admire about Japanese people. Number 9, I think, or number 10. Problematic co-workers. How would you deal with a problematic co-worker? You have to be positive, you have to be positive and understanding and show that you can easily integrate and live among other people, regardless of where you're from, different culture, maybe different race. How are you able to maneuver a problematic situation without having to explode? So you could, you could say, I don't know, you could say something like, if you have a problematic co-teacher, maybe talk about why you think it's problematic, and always try and reference it to be on you and say, oh, maybe it's about language barrier. I'll try and ask for feedback after lessons. I'll try, ask them, speak to them more, or offer to help them more so that they can open up fully to you, and then you can create a rapport. If you were to have any issues whatsoever, you would call them aside and not blast them in public, and then talk about it. Something like that should suffice. Yeah. Next, this is a tricky question. What do you think your referees will say about you? Be very conscious. Don't go and don't give an answer and then go tell your referees what to say. But just have fun with it. Like for me, I just said, oh, I think they'll say that I'm a very creative person, given my background with, performing arts, theater, music, drama. But then again, I think they would say that I'm a nice person to work with. But obviously, if you have good referees, they're always going to put in a good word for you. You don't have to go back and tell them, oh, so this is what I said. You have to align your answer with this. You don't have to do that. That way, it just shows that you're not honest. They know what you said, and then your referee said the exact same thing you said in the interview. It means it's like a bribe of sorts. You went and told them, oh, you have to say this. So it really doesn't matter. It's just a question. Another question is, what would you do if a student isn't paying attention in your class or concentrating? This is a very common question because it's related to your job. They just want to see how creative you are. You could say, oh, maybe I would make students stand up and sing or do an activity related to, the lesson, something of the sort, or try and engage the students more when it comes to activities or answering questions or demonstrations. Something like that should work. Don't don't make it too deep. Just make it fun and creative. They just want to see, are you good with, handling such a situation and what would you do about it? Next question, work etiquette. Basically, they can ask you, oh, what do you think are some of the things that you're not supposed to do in the work environment or the work setting or in a school setup? So obviously, you don't gossip, you don't stay on your phone 24/7, you don't sleep. Just think of things that could be problematic in a work setting, but also research the Japanese work culture and know what exactly is accepted and what is not. But basically, as a teacher, you're not supposed to gossip with other teachers. You're not supposed to just lazy around. You're not supposed to insult. You can't do drugs in the school. You have to dress a certain way, respectively. So think along those lines. Next, what are you going to do if you have free time? Basically, talk about planning lessons and preparing, maybe joining a club activity, or maybe discussing lessons with your co-teachers, or trying to just walk around the school, something of the sort. Join another lesson and learn on new teaching techniques or teaching methods is always a good way to go. Next, do you prefer living in a rural area or a city? Again, flexibility. You don't need to say, oh, I just prefer a city. You could talk about maybe your whole life you've lived in a city and you'd want to experience the rural life, or maybe you're just not picky. Whichever way, you'd be more than happy. So it's okay. And then lastly, they might ask about your teaching experience. Now, so many people have not taught before. Like I said, many people who moved to Japan have never been in a classroom to teach, but you don't have to, go on and lie about this. Think about the most basic things that you've done. Some of us, immediately after high school, we went back to our old primary schools or elementary schools and taught something. You have been a Sunday school teacher before. You have been maybe in a company, maybe you work in business or you work whatever sector in corporate, and maybe your company would hold workshops in schools for career days and talking to students. Anything that involves working with children is okay. It doesn't have to be English. You could be teaching math. You could be just a mentor to students or children. That really doesn't matter. I think that concludes possible interview questions that you're going to be asked. It might not be exact. Some of them could be exact. But I think that should act as a guideline. Okay, thank you so much guys for watching this week's video. Please be sure to hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, leave a comment, follow me on Instagram at OpenDonIce. We are going to have a live very soon where you guys get the opportunity to ask me questions. That being said, see you again next week, same place, same time.